Hey everybody, I'm back. I want to talk to you before I get started about, I said I was going to show you where that same man of lawlessness in Second Thessalonians 2, now I'm going to show you the scriptures in Revelation that fit him, like we did from Daniel last time. So, first of all, I'm going to turn this down a little bit here. First of all, I want to hit just a minute on the symbolism question in Revelation, because I mentioned that there are people, popular theologies out there now that you can't understand Revelation, that it's a big, huge allegory, and you have to know everything's a symbol, and nothing's really, you can't really say that anything really happened, that those are really stars that fall from the heaven and all this kind of thing. So I'm going to try to help us, and I've been thinking on this too the last couple of days. Okay, what are some examples for how we can tell when something is a symbol and when something is meant to be real? Okay, well, I said this morning that the hellfire, that the beast being thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone with the false prophet, where they are tormented forever and ever. The logical thing to do there for someone who reads the word is saying, oh yeah, Jesus talked about hellfire. That's got to be hell. That's a real reality, unless we want to say that what Jesus said, we never know if he was talking in symbols or whatever. And he did speak in parables, right? But and the fact that, let's see, like the scene in Revelation 21, I believe it is, it's 20, where John says, I saw thrones and they sat on them, and judgment was committed to them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the word of God, for their witness to Jesus, and for the word of God, who had not worshipped the beast in his image and had not received his mark. And they lived and reigned for 1,000 years. Well, so if you're saying that that's already begun, again, or that's symbolic of what's really, we're ruling and reigning with Christ now. What do we do with the fact that Jesus said, when I return and sit on my throne of glory, you also will sit on 12 thrones judging Israel. That's Matthew 19. So I logically go back to that Matthew passage when I see, they sit on the thrones, they sit on them, and they ruled and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. They're priests of God. Logical thing. Okay, so I would take that passage in Revelation 20 and say, hey, that's what Jesus said is going to happen. That's real. That's not a symbol of some kind or some kind of allegory. Another thing, Revelation 12 is very symbolic. You first see a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon on her feet, and a garland of 12 stars on her head. And being with child, she cries out in labor and in pain to give birth. Well, 12 stars always puts me in mind of Israel because of Joseph's dreams of the 12 stars. And he was, I've forgotten the dream now, but anyway, we know from that that's Jacob's 12 sons. That stands for the 12 tribes of Israel in the Word. So when I see a woman with 12 stars, I'm thinking, this is probably a symbol of Israel. Sure enough, she gives birth to a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. We know who that is. Now, John the Revelator, the man who saw all this, he would have known who this male child was, because not only did he know the male child in real life, and this is when John was about 80 years old, most think. He was given the revelation somewhere between 70 and 90 A.D. Paul had been dead maybe 10 years or so, or more. Anyway, so John the Revelator, he knew from Psalm 2, for instance, though, besides knowing Jesus and maybe having Jesus tell him these things, he knew Psalm 2 that said, I've set my king on my holy mountain. Ask me for the nations. You're going to rule them with a rod of iron. Well, there it is. He's seeing this woman giving birth to a male child. So, yes, there is symbolism in Revelation, but we know what it is. In that very same chapter, it says, the great dragon waged war against Michael and his angels in this scene, this same chapter, Revelation 12. And it says, the dragon, that serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, was cast out, and his angels were cast out with him. So there's this dragon in this scene. Well, there's not John knew instinctively, oh, this is the devil, the serpent of old. So, I'm just trying to make the point that yes, there is symbolism in the book of Revelation, but it is always explained or obvious. It's a bit like interpreting dreams. Joseph had these interpretations for Pharaoh. Pharaoh had seen healthy stalks of grain, and then he saw withered, or I forgot the word, not so healthy stalks of grain. Next to him he saw 7 fat cows, and then he saw 7 skinny cows. Well, fat, abundance, skinny, withered, not abundance. Joseph interpreted those dreams quite simply. Some dream interpretations not so simple, but this seeing symbols, things that couldn't, probably are not, probably there's not going to be a dragon fall out of the sky and a woman with a wreath on her head of 12 stars in the end times. But what John knew was he was seeing what was going to happen in the form of a picture, because prophetic insight is through pictures. We see pictures. Dreams are pictures, and we learn how God speaks to us through those pictures. If I see, for instance, a father or an authority person in a dream, I know that this is something about either a father or an authority figure. Let's see, I think there was one more I was going to give you for... Oh, and when Jesus in Revelation 20, describing the scene where he comes on the white horse, and it says, and the beast, John saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. And it says, and the beast and the false prophet were thrown into the lake of fire, and the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse. Now, I believe John saw some picture, and there was actually a sword coming out of Christ's mouth. That doesn't mean that when he comes back, he's going to have a sharp sword coming out of his mouth. That John knew instinctively that sharp sword in the mouth meant his word, because he knew the word. And in Isaiah, let's see if I can find this passage. It's 49, I believe. Yeah, 49:2. There is a picture of God's sharp sword in his mouth. I can't remember how it's worded. I won't go into it right now, but check that out. Isaiah 49:2 and Isaiah 11:4 speaks of a sword and connects it with word. So, John would have known that. It's not rocket science. Okay, so let's get into... let's get in. So I'm saying too that these men, Paul would have known the word. He would have known, obviously, he was a scholar. He would have known these passages, and he had this revelation of the man of lawlessness before John saw what he saw on Patmos. So Paul, the Lord may have shown him something in a dream, and he may have been bouncing off some of Daniel and Isaiah, to come up with what he wrote. There's this man of lawlessness that's going to appear, and he's going to operate in power. Okay, so we're going to go on, and now in Revelation, I'm going to show you these passages, and I have combined in the beast, this character in Revelation that is tied to and is the same as the man in Second Thessalonians 2. In this, I've tied the beast and the false prophet together because they're a team. When John in Revelation 13 sees a beast coming up out of the sea, and he describes him, and it's obviously this man of lawlessness of Second Thessalonians 2. Then he immediately sees another beast, and he worships and causes the earth to worship that first beast. So you've got two beasts working together here, a false prophet and a head dude. Okay, most people call him the Antichrist, but that's not really biblical. So anyway, so we're going to look at, I've got board may not with these passages on it so you can see it, and I'll move it up in a minute, but the first one we went over this morning in Daniel was how the deceiver was described in Daniel. Now, in Revelation 13, let me go back here, verse 14, it says that he deceives this beast, which is being described in Revelation 13. He deceives those on the earth by the signs it was given him to do. And this is actually talking about the false prophet. But as I said, we're going to treat them like a team because the false prophet and the beast are working together. Now, that's the only thing I have for deceiving, but you'll see it's kind of a general theme here. Now, the second characteristic is that he's a desolator, or he's one who makes desolate. We saw that in Daniel and in Second Thessalonians 2. Now, in Revelation 13:12 and verse 15, it talks about how this team, this false prophet and the beast, set up an idol to worship. Okay? And now the next characteristic is the arrogant characteristic, which we saw of this man, this real man, in Second Thessalonians 2 and in Daniel. In Revelation 13:1, it says it describes this beast having on his head a blasphemous name. There's the arrogance. In 13:5 and 6, he speaks blasphemies, gets a little more specific here. And in Revelation 17:3, John is shown this beast that's holding up this harlot called Babylon, and on the beast are blasphemous names. This is the beast that of Revelation. Now, in chapter 17, it goes on. In verse 14, we see this beast seeking to make war against the Lamb. And in 19:19, what I just described a minute ago was where the beast and the kings of the earth were all lined up together with their armies to make war against Christ who has come. And he's on his white horse, and the armies of heaven are with him. Okay? So now, and the final topic is that the final characteristic of this man in Revelation, who's called the beast, he uses power and signs and wonders. He's able to tap into some power, and there are signs and wonders that surround him. So in Revelation 13:1 and 2, it says he has 10 crowns. Now, crowns, in the word, that stands for power, obviously, thrones. And he's empowered by the dragon. And we know who the dragon is from Revelation 12:9. He's that serpent of old, the devil, who is called Satan. So, this beast is empowered by the dragon, Revelation 13:1 and 2. Now, Revelation 13:7 says that authority is given to him. So, again, he's using this authority, this power. Now, in 13:8, it says he causes all to worship him, except those whose names are written in the book of life. Okay? Now, in 13:13, here's the false prophet performing signs. He even calls fire down from heaven to the earth. And in 13:15, the false prophet gives breath to this image that he has set up. There's a sign. In verse 17 of chapter 13, he controls the buying and selling on the earth. And in 17 verse 8, he dies and comes back to life, this beast. He has a mortal wound that's healed, and all the world marvels because of it. And this is one thing, we talked about his power to deceive and all that in Second Thessalonians 2, but we didn't really, and in Daniel even, but I didn't really speak about the strong delusion that comes about on people. And a lot of it's going to be because of this power, and I'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, so let's go on. In Revelation 11:7, he ascends out of the pit and kills the 2 witnesses of God, the 2 olive trees, the 2 lampstands, who are like a Moses and Elijah figures in Revelation 11. And in Revelation 17:12 and 17, he is over 10 kings. So there's his power. He's over That's the same thing as those 10 crowns in the first verses of Revelation 13. So I want to talk a second about that, the fact that he operates in signs and wonders. We're going to see, when you have a man here on the earth, and if, as I talked about before, all the Muslims are saying, well, this is Jesus, because in our books it says that Jesus is going to come back to the earth and he's going to perform miracles. And he's going to tell everybody that it wasn't him on the cross. This is what the Shia Muslims, the lies that they propagate. So you've got this man calling down fire from heaven. To think about it, the whole world's seeing it. We got instant communication everywhere. You can see anything across the world anytime now. And you've got all the Muslim world. If this is the scenario, I don't know. Maybe Islam is going to be nothing by the end of the world. I don't know. Right now it looks like a likely scenario. I mean, if you've got this person that's doing these amazing wonders, and it says if God will send that strong delusion because they did not love the truth. They did not receive the love of the truth. Now, there are many of us who've not received the love of the truth, and we could be easily swayed by power. And that's why this is going to be such a time of just a time, a confusing time on the earth. If we don't know the Word, if we don't not only know the Word, we know the person behind the Word, and we're asking and we're drawing near to Him. So I just want to stress again how amazing this is going to be. I mean, we're talking, of course, we got robotics now, so it's not such a big deal to think about an image speaking and somebody empowering an image. We got robots that do anything right now. So that's not so fascinating to think about. But this calling fire down from heaven, a man standing on the earth doing that, and he's not one of us. He's not Elijah. But he looks good because this man of lawlessness is going to look good. He's going to make some kind of covenant with Israel. And so he's going to look pretty good. Real good. So if we don't know the Spirit of God, if we can't test the spirits, like the Apostle John said in 1 John 4. So I guess that's about it for now. I'm going to go on and go into Ezra because I feel like I personally need to build altars. I mean, I know that all of America, Chuck Pierce said this last week. No, it wasn't. It was a month ago. Said, it's time for us to build altars. We have got to be in prayer, to be worshiping God. This is a battle like America's never been in. And this is a pivotal time right here. He was saying he believes April is very, very pivotal. But I want to go over, in my heart, I want to have my heart postured for the prayer that I prayed this morning. Will you not revive us again, that your people may rejoice in you? Lord, give us your mercy, Lord, and grant us your salvation, because we need salvation. Again, we must realize, let me give you this for instance. I was thinking this morning about when I was riding my bike. I get revelation on my bicycle too. I was thinking about the actions of people below, 30 and under. I was talking about that this morning too. But then I remembered that the woman who is probably, with the exception of the First Lady of Melania Trump, she's probably the highest ranking woman in the land. And I'm not even going to mention names. We all know who she is. When President Trump gave his State of the Union address, she proceeded to, in front of the whole world, tear up her copy of the address in an act of defiance. And my mind went back to the story of Esther and Queen Vashti. And that the king of Persia, Ahasuerus, he realized in those days, if he didn't do something about that, that no woman would respect her husband. Because what she did was she refused her husband. She refused to come into public in some kind of act of defiance, I suppose. But what this lady did in front of the whole world on that day, on that night, that day, gave permission to defy authority. Just a blanket permission to defy authority. We don't have such a division between men and women in authority now because we have many women in authority. But what she did was she gave permission. And I don't know, it just never hit me before that was a Vashti moment right there. And I don't know what I'm saying yet, but I'm going to talk more about it. So we need to know how to call out what we've done as a nation where we have snubbed God. Because when you rebel against authority, you're rebelling against God. It's just that simple. Because authorities are set in place by God. So we'll talk about it some more and go into Ezra next time. Bless you.